This is the Math 2 lesson summary video for the lesson entitled Congruent Triangles. For Lesson 3, Congruent Triangles, in Unit 2, the purpose of this lesson was to establish angle, side angle, side angle, side, 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 angle, angle, side, and hypotenuse, leg as ways to conclude that two triangles are congruent. So if you missed class today, you need to make sure, if you're looking at the Ready, Set, Go, that you understand how to apply these 5 ways to prove triangles congruent. There are 3 vocabulary words that were in this section of Unit 2. You want to make sure that you have those written down in your notes. The first thing that we did in class was we were asked to take a look at these 2 triangles. And unlike the previous task, where we started with congruent figures and we were asked to transform them, in this task we start with figures we don't know are congruent and we're trying to convince ourselves that they are. So if we look at triangle ABC on the left and triangle RST on the right, we can see that the diagrams are marked. So the first thing we discussed was that which angles are congruent and which sides. And based on the markings, we can conclude that angle A is congruent to angle R. Angle B, because it has 2 arc marks, is congruent to angle S. And line segment AB is congruent to line segment RS. So we wrote that in our notes. To convince ourselves that these 2 triangles are congruent, we had to figure out what else we would need to know. And as a class, we believed that we would need line segment AC would be congruent to line segment RT, and line segment BC would be congruent to line segment ST. And I'll just add that line segment bar. Okay, so we actually did an activity in class where we used patty paper, tracing paper, and we physically traced triangle ABC on that tracing paper. And we matched and coincided triangle ABC, each of its vertices, onto triangle RST. So we did that by actually translating triangle ABC right and down, rotating it, and then reflecting it. So we had 3 transformations for the first one. And what we notice is that they did overlap and they coincided perfectly so that they were congruent. So based on this, we can conclude that an angle, side, angle is enough information for us to say that 2 triangles are congruent. So if you look at the next page, I highlighted here angle, side, angle criteria. We knew that because when we translated point A until it coincided with point R, and then we rotated line segment AB about point R until it coincided with line segment RS, and then reflected triangle ABC across RS, we noticed that they coincided, which means that we can conclude that they are congruent. We were then asked to look at some other diagrams, some other triangles, and conclude if they were definitely congruent. So again, we had tracing paper in class, and on this number 6, we saw that they definitely did overlap, and we translated point K until it coincided with point Q, so we did translate it right and up. We rotated line segment KL about point R until it coincided with line segment QR, and then we reflected triangle ABC across QR. So what we notice is that triangle KLJ coincided, overlapped perfectly with triangle QRP, which means that side, angle, side is enough criteria. Side, angle, side is our second criteria to say that 2 triangles are indeed congruent. In number 7, we were asked to take a look at triangle OUI, and we were asked to determine if it was congruent to the triangle on the right. And the first thing that we noticed was that angle O had 2 tick marks, angle Q had 2 tick marks, angle I had 3 tick marks, angle P had 3 tick marks, and angle U had 1 tick mark, as well as angle R. So basically, we're trying to figure out if angle, if knowing three angles was enough information to determine two triangles were congruent. And what we actually noticed is when we tried to overlap angle O onto angle R, and we traced the triangle on the left, we noticed it did not overlap perfectly with the triangle on the right. And if you do have lined paper or tracing paper at home, you can trace this triangle on the left and you will see that it will not overlap and coincide onto that triangle on the right. So angle, unfortunately, is not a way to prove triangles congruent. The next thing we went on to, on 8, is we were given these diagrams and we were asked, basically, is side angle and side angle, is side angle a way to prove triangles congruent? And we did the same thing that we did in the previous. In number 7, we traced the triangle on the left and we tried to coincide that triangle on the left and overlap its congruent parts. And what we noticed is it did not overlap perfectly, so we said no, that we cannot use side angle. It is actually not enough information for us to prove that triangles are congruent. And in number 9, we were then asked if it's enough information if we have 3 sides, 1, 2, 3, like the triangle on the left, and we have them marked congruent to 3 sides on another triangle, is that enough information? And when we tried to overlap CB onto QR, we saw that they overlapped, and at the same time we were looking to see if line segment AB was congruent to line segment Q, and that should be a P. And we saw that they did, and those two triangles overlap perfectly. So we would say that these two triangles are congruent by SSS, and we said yes. Okay, so we could physically see with our eyes in that tracing paper that they overlapped very nicely. Okay, what we could do with our constructions, which I wrote here in bullets, is we could translate point P until it coincides with Q. So going back to our lesson from yesterday in class, rotating line segment BA about point R until it coincides with QP, and then reflecting triangle ABC across line QP. So if you look at the diagram on the right, you can see that that was done using congruent circles, and that diagram is there for you to take a look at. So then in number 11 and 12, we were actually asked if we could use or add angle, side to our list. So what I've done here for 11 is I've drawn 2 diagrams, 2 triangles, and I've marked them congruent so it looks like angle, side, angle. So the question is if these will be congruent. They're asking an 11 by AAS as well. So if I look at these 2 diagrams, we know for sure that they're congruent because we've already talked about that. They are congruent by angle, side, angle. And the interesting thing about this is that we know for a fact, based on our prior math knowledge in Math 1, that this third angle would need to be congruent to this third angle, because we know that the angles in a triangle add to 180. So I know that angle A has to be congruent to angle D by the reasoning that 180 degrees is the sum of the angles in any triangle. So yes, we can actually say that angle, side is a 4th way to say that triangles will be congruent. And moving to 12, in 12 they were asking us, can we add HL, hypotenuse leg, to our list? And if we look at these 2, we do notice that they are marked so that we have angle, side angle in each of them. So side angle. So we know that we said you can't prove by side angle. But we're asked to say, can we say hypotenuse leg? Because in a right triangle, these are each of my legs, and that's my hypotenuse. So what we know that's interesting is if from Math 1, if I know this is a right triangle and I know this length is 3 and this length is 5, is it possible for me to get this missing length? And we said yes. We know that missing length because we can use Pythagoras' theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and that length would actually be 4. So we can actually use hypotenuse leg as a fifth way to prove triangles congruent because of the fact that if we see side-side angle, what we can say is that our third side would need to be the same or congruent because of Pythagoras' theorem. So to sum up the end of this lesson, you should have gotten 5 ways to prove triangles congruent. They are side, 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 angle, side, angle, hypotenuse leg, and angle, angle, side. If you need more help on the Ready, Set, Go homework for this task, please remember to check the Canvas support website.